So first let's open the document. See, the last example we have completed with the JSP. Okay. So today instead of using JSP, that we want to use Timely. So let's quickly identify, just like JSP only, but we don't want to use JSP. Instead of that, we want to use Timely. So in the next example, instead of using JSP, we want to use Timely as a content viewer. So Timely is nothing but it is a set of attributes. A set of attributes that could be used in HTML tags.
Recording in progress.
Right. Okay, so today we will create example with the Timely as a view technology. I'll show you the example directly. Timely as a view technology. So just now I told Timely is nothing but it is a set of attributes that could be used in HTML tags or inside HTML tags. So by adding these Timely attributes, we can make the HTML page as a dynamic page. Actually, ordinary HTML pages are static pages. Okay, but you want to make the HTML as a dynamic page. So to make or to prepare dynamic HTML pages, we can add Timely attributes inside HTML tags. And what happens at the server? At the server, there is a Timely engine. For example, at the server side, there is a Timely engine. Now this Timely engine will execute the Timely attributes that are inside HTML tags, and will replace those Timely attributes into dynamic content. Finally, we can say that this Timely engine will process the Timely attributes that are inside HTML tags, will process the Timely attributes, and will replace the Timely attributes with the dynamic content. And finally, whatever the HTML response that is generated after processing the Timely attributes, that will be sent as a response to the client. So finally, the client is going to get the dynamic page. Client is going to get the dynamic web page. So how the page is going to become dynamic? In server there is a, or at the server there is a Timely engine, and that will process the Timely attributes and will replace the Timely attributes with the time leaf namespace. So we have to import the time leaf namespace in order to use the time leaf attributes inside HTML tags. And how do you import the time leaf namespace is by using this XML underscore and th. XML ns means namespace. Prefix is th for the attributes. So this is the time leaf namespace. This namespace is to be imported into HTML page or into HTML file. Then only we can add time leaf attributes inside HTML tags. And whenever any time leaf attribute is there inside HTML tag, the time leaf engine will process that attribute and will prepare the dynamic content for that particular attribute. So finally the page is going to become like a dynamic page, and the dynamic page will be displaying the response like so. It is making the HTML as a dynamic HTML. Basically normal HTML is a static web page. HTML can be used to create a static web page, but HTML plus time leaf attributes will make the HTML as a dynamic web page. So what are the attributes defined in time leaf namespace? And what is the purpose of them? How to use them? There are a set of attributes that time leaf has introduced. So those attributes we have to know. That is understood one by one time leaf attribute. Go for the predefined option. So previously what we have used JSP as a view technology. Previously JSP is a view technology, which means in JSP also we have HTML tags. Along with HTML tags we can also add JSP tags. So why we are including JSP tags along with HTML tags inside the JSP file is to make the dynamic web page or to build a dynamic web page. Similarly, here also to build a dynamic web page, we are adding time leaf attributes inside HTML tags. So we have to know what are the time leaf attributes and how to use them so that I can able to build a dynamic web page. I can include them inside HTML tags and I can make the pages dynamic web page. So that is what we have to do. If at all you want to use the attributes inside HTML tag, first you need to import the namespace. There is a namespace in which all the attributes are defined. So first we need to import the namespace, then only we can use it. Just like in Java, we are importing the package to use the classes of that package. So you have to always compare like this. A namespace is like a package in Java, but in package we have a class or we have group of classes. In namespace we have some tags and attributes. Correct? If you want to use the classes in any Java program, first we need to import the package. Similarly, here we need to import the namespace. That's the only difference. Okay. So, how to import? In Java, import is a keyword. But in case of namespaces, the keyword is XML-NS. So, XML-NS is like importing. And while importing, we should also include a prefix to use those attributes or tags. And the prefix that we have used here th, and this prefix can be any string with any name. So I am writing th to indicate it's a time leaf, but you can also write a t, only t, xmlns colon t or xmlns colon thy, up to you. So it is okay, it is any, the prefix can be any name. The syntax is xmlns colon some prefix, and this is the prefix for using the time leaf attributes inside HTML tags. So we have to use like this th colon text. That is one attribute. Th colon text, time leaf attribute. Th colon each. Like this we have th colon href, th colon action. Okay, so like this we have of course multiple attributes. I will show you. These are all called time-leaf attributes. All these attributes are going to start with a prefix called th colon, because the prefix that we use here is xml minus colon th. So why the prefix is mandatory, again there is a big story for that, but right now I can tell you in short. In short, suppose if you are importing the two namespaces, into HTML file, you are importing the two namespaces. What if both the namespaces are containing same attribute? What if two namespaces are containing the same attribute? Then there is a collision, conflict. That's why while importing the namespace only, we also need to give a prefix. We also need to configure a prefix to use those attributes of that namespace. Now, two namespaces are having two different prefixes. Prefix 1, prefix 2. While importing the first namespace, prefix 1. While importing the second namespace, prefix 2. So now how to use the attributes now? Using the prefix. For example, I am writing pr1 colon text. pr1 colon text. Suppose text attribute is there in both namespaces. But how to distinguish them? By using their prefix. pr1 colon text means then the engine, the template engine, the time-leaf engine understands that this text attribute should be used from first namespace. pr2.text means it should be used from second namespace, like that. So to avoid the conflicts, what is required? Prefix. So that's why at the time of importing the namespaces, we also need to include some prefix. A prefix string is required so that if another namespace is also imported in future, then if the two namespaces are containing same attribute or same tag, then there will be no conflict, because the tags and attributes are used with respect to prefix. That prefix will distinguish the tag from one namespace with the tag from another namespace. That's what. So what we are going to use today, we use time-leaf attributes to build simple login application in which we'll be having sign up and sign in, both operations. Okay, observe this. There are different time-leaf attributes are there. I will show you some of the attributes, and then we will discuss about what is a data binding. Then we will see a same login application, but this time we use both operations, sign up and sign in. Last example is only sign in, but now we want to add both sign up and sign in. So new user can sign up and existing user can sign in, and the difference is yesterday's example was using JSP, but this example is going to use time-leaf, so that you will learn some time-leaf attributes, then we can apply validations further. But today we want to complete approaches. Let's see how it goes. You see the time-leaf attributes. You can see these are the time-leaf attributes. Timeleaf is a modern server-side Java template engine, and it's especially popular in Spring Boot applications for rendering dynamic HTML content. Timeleaf allows you to create HTML templates that contains both static and dynamic content. It works like a JSPR free marker, but with better integration with Spring MVC. Timeleaf replaces special attributes with real data at runtime. Now these are attributes. These are called Timeleaf attributes. There is an attribute called th:\text. This attribute th:\text replaces with real data at runtime. Replaces the content inside the tag with the real data at runtime. For example, I am writing example usage like this now. P, that is paragraph tag, and Timeleaf attributes are used inside HTML tag. Now we know paragraph tag is an HTML tag. Timeleaf attributes cannot be used directly, they must be used within HTML tags. So P is a HTML tag, paragraph tag, and th:\text, it's a Timeleaf attribute, and this is the template. Dollar and curly braces represents expression. It is one expression. Now this expression will be replaced with the real data at runtime. Means this expression will be replaced with the real data, means the employee name. So what happens if this employee does not have a name, for example? Then the default value given here, that will be printed. So at runtime, suppose if employee name is John, then this paragraph tag will display the content as John, but not like name. Okay, so I am writing the default text as name. The default text as name. But what happens actually? Actually, what happens? I am writing the default text as what name. But actually, what happens now? At runtime, the real data will be replaced whenever this attribute is processed. This attribute is processed. In place of that, what data will be placed? The real data of employee name. For example, if employee name is missing, then name will be printed, the default value. If employee name is John, then in place of name, what will be printed in the paragraph? John will be printed. So what this attribute th:\text will do? Will replace the content inside the tag. Will replace the content inside the tag. It replaces the content inside the tag. That is called th:\text. Now, if you want to add a condition, based on the condition, either you want to display this message or not. So how to add the condition? The Timeleaf attribute is th:\if. What happens when you write th:\if? It conditionally renders the element if the expression is true. Renders means executes. Renders meaning executing it. Means when the message active will be executed or when the message active will be printed. If this condition is true. What's the condition? For example, employee dot active. This is one template expression. This template expression is executed by the Timeleaf engine and will replace with the actual value. What is the actual value here or the real data here? Whether employee is active or not. For example, active is a boolean then the message active will be printed. If the boolean variable is false, this message will not be there. Okay, right? Which means on the dynamic page, when can we see the message called active? If the employee is active. There is a condition. What's the condition? Check whether employee is active or not. At runtime, the condition gets verified. The template engine will process this attribute. Will replace with the actual data. If the actual data is true, then the content will be displayed. If the actual data is false, then this content will not be displayed. Means what? Conditionally renders the element if the expression is true. This is called one expression. Within dollar and curly braces, whatever you write, this is called one expression. Correct? If this expression is true, then this data will be rendered in the output. Otherwise, it is not. So how to add such kind of condition to render the data? Use an attribute. What is the attribute name? Th colon. We'll see all these attributes in the next example, whatever that we are discussing. But first you have to learn some attributes before we start using them practically into our application. So th colon text means it is used to replace the content inside the tag. It is used to replace the content inside the tag. Th colon if is nothing but conditionally rendering the element if the expression is true. Means as add the condition. If the condition is true, then a tag data will be displayed in the output. If condition is false, then a tag data will not be displayed in the output. That's all. That is called what th colon. Th colon unless opposite of if. What is the opposite of if? If the expression is false, then this tag gets executed and output of the tag is displayed in the output. If means what? If the condition is true. But here what if the condition is false? Opposite of th colon if. Renders only if the expression is false. That is if. This is what? Unless. Previous one is th colon if. This is what? Th colon unless. And this is important. This is like a for each loop. This is like a for each loop. Th colon each. What this th colon each will do? It will iterate the collection. And in every iteration, it will have one element. That element will be stored in a variable called what? EM. For example, this is a collection. This expression is a, the actual value of this expression is a collection, like a list. The actual value of this expression is a collection, which is a list. Now, what this each will do? This will iterate over this collection. While iterating over the collection, it will receive one by one element from the collection. That each element received from the collection will be stored in EM. So this is one expression. At runtime, what is the real value of this expression? The real value of this expression is a collection, the Java collection. Then what this each attribute will do? Will loop through the collection. While loop through the collection, while iterating the collection, it will fetch one by one element from the collection. And in each iteration, the element will be stored in which variable? EM. Suppose if this list is a list of employees, in every iteration, the attribute th colon each will be seen. One element will be placed. That element will be stored on if the list contains 10 employees, then this will iterate over 10 times. In the first iteration, it will see one employee. In the second iteration, second employee. when you are writing the URL in a timely pattern, then that URL should start with @ the rate. At the rate represents it's a URL. Whenever you are writing any location, whenever you are writing some URL, okay, that URL must be specified with @ the rate. th colon href. It is to dynamically set the href attribute in enter tag. Now this is a URL. URL starts with @ the rate /heading /id. id is an expression. And what should be the value for id? id is a template variable. id is for template variable. This template variable should be replaced with the actual value. This template variable should be replaced with actual employee id. So id is equal to, set the value for id. What expression? $emp.id. Means what this, okay, what this expression will read or will retrieve. This is the expression or the actual value of this expression, employee id. That will be assigned to a variable called id. Now in place of this id variable, what is going to be replaced? The value of id variable. This is the id. What is the value of id variable? Employee id. If employee id is 7101, then in place of this id variable, what the value, actual value comes? 7101. So this URL becomes what? /edit /7101. This will be /edit /7101. Like if employee ID is 7788, the real value of this expression is 7788 at runtime. Then that value is assigned to which variable? ID variable. Means in place of the ID variable, the template variable ID, actual value is 7788. Construct the URL, but the symbol that you have to use. th colon src. Dynamically will set the src attribute of images or scripts. HTML img tag contains source attribute. Okay, src is equal to, you are writing the location of the image. Correct? Now, if you want to dynamically set the source attribute, then what is the HTML? What is the timely attribute? th colon src. And since it is a URL, so the URL is going to be added with @ the rate. So this is to set the source attribute for the image. Of course, right now here I am writing static value. I can also write static value. I can also dynamic value. I can use some template variable and I can assign the template variable with a value. Then like this, I can also use here. But right now this example is only static. th colon value. Input text. Whenever you just create a text box, for example, if you want to put some value in the text box, you know HTML already. For example, if you write input type is equal to text, name equal to d1, for example, value equal to admin. What happens whenever this tag executes? Okay, what this tag will display? This tag will display one text box. And what is the value also displayed in the text box for you whenever you open the page? Admin. Because what the value that you have added here? Admin. So value will be replaced, the value is going to be printed inside the text boxes admin. So input type is equal to text, name equal to t1, value equal to 10. Right? This is value. But you are providing static value here. But how to set dynamic value? TH colon value expression will be replaced by real value, actual value, runtime. What is going to be the actual value? Name of the employee. But name of the employee will be set as a value. So whenever the text box display, what will come inside the text box?
Should start with @ If it is an expression, it should start with what? $. Dollar curly braces represents what? Expression. But @ curly braces represent what? URL. URL. Okay? Right. Come back. In one example, you will understand all these things. But now we need to focus on two things. One is called th colon object. Next one is called th colon field. Okay. What does it mean? See, in Spring, we have a feature called data binding. I repeat, in Spring, we have a feature called what? Data binding. What this data binding is? What is this meaning of data binding? Data binding is nothing but you can bind a form and a Java object together. For example, this is the form. It is one form. This is an object. Okay. Now, what is a data binding facility? Data binding is a facility in Spring that you can bind a form and object. You can bind a form with an object. When should I bind like this? My requirement is whenever the form is submitted, my requirement is what? This total form data I would like to set into this object. When a user clicks on submit, this is submitted form data I want to store in a object. So as and when submit button is clicked, all the data that is submitted through the form, I would like to store that data into first object. Okay. If I want to store like this is called data binding. It's one facility in Spring. If I want to store the data whenever it is submitted, I would like to store it in a object. If I want to store the data into an object, first I should bind them together. What and what I should bind them together? This form and this object. This feature is called what feature? Data binding. Once the data of the form is kept in object, then I can start using the data from the object and implementing validations. So those things can be done after the data is stored into object. So what? If I want to store this form data into that object whenever the form is submitted. Whenever the form is submitted, I want to keep the data into the object first. After the data is placed in object, later then I will use the data from the object to perform validations and for other purposes. For that I should bind them together. Okay, we can bind. What and what we can bind with each other in Spring? A form and an object. Both you can bind them together. Nothing but what? This is the object, which is the backend for this form. Nothing but what? This is the form backing object. This object is also called what object? Form backing object. What is the meaning of form backing object? This object is the back of the form. Nothing but what? Whenever the form is submitted from front end, in the back end, this data is going to be stored in object. That's why it is called form backing object. We want to bind them together. Okay, we can bind. But how to bind? At the time of designing the form, we have to use one attribute called th::object. Okay, what is the attribute name? th::object. This is the attribute we have to use in the form tag. In form tag, you know form tag contains action attribute, method attribute, right? Along with action attribute, method attribute, we can also add one more attribute called what? th::object. What this attribute will do? It will bind a form with object. If you want to bind a form to an object, which attribute have to use? th::object. I'll tell you. So how to bind them? By adding this attribute. What's the attribute? th::object. This is an expression. Okay. This expression is evaluated, and in place of this actual value will be replaced at runtime. At runtime, the actual value, the real value will be replaced for this expression. So this attribute will play a key role in binding a form and an object together. Okay, I will tell you. Okay, form and object are binded together by using th::object. For example, here there is a form element called username. Here there is a form element called username. There is a form element called username. There is a form element called password. Example. This is the form. This is object. In object we have a property called username property. This object contains another property called password property. Now whenever the form is submitted, then this field, this is called a field in the form. This username field, okay, this field value should be set to username field in the object, username property of the object. And this form element password, its value should be set to the field called password field of the object. How to bind like that? By using th:'field. What this will do? It will bind the form fields to object properties. Who are the form fields here? One is a username field and next one is a password field. Who are the two properties here? Username and password. So how can you bind them? How to bind this field with this property? How to bind this field with this property? By using one attribute. What's the attribute? th:'field. And when you are binding to the field, the syntax is asterisk. Asterisk represents it is a field or it is a property. So there are three types of symbols in Thymeleaf. One is $, then curly braces. Next one is @ curly braces. Next one is star curly braces. $, means expression, @ means URL, star means field. Okay. So this is a field expression. This is a URL expression. This is a value expression. Value expression starts with $. URL expression starts with @ field expression starts with star. Okay. Good. Suppose when I am designing the form, while designing the form, for example, I am writing like this. Username, it's a label. Input type is equal to text. Input type is equal to text. th:'field equals to star curly brace username. Similarly, password, input type is equal to password. Next, th:'field equal to star curly brace password. So if you design like this now, then this form element or this form field is binded to which property of the object? Username. And this password field is binded to which property of the object? Password. What is the meaning of binding now? Whenever you click on submit button, the value of this username field will be set to username property. And the value of the password field will be set in password property by calling the respective setter methods. So this is nothing but what this form data is now placed in or is stored into object. Okay. So if you want to bind the fields with the properties, first of all the form must be binded to the object. So how to bind this form and object together? By using th::object. Next, in Spring, this data binding will work in two-way. What is two-way? I'll tell you what is two-way. When the form is getting displayed, this form is binded to this object, right? What and what we are binding? We are binding the form and object. Look at this. This is a form. This is object. These two are binded with each other. These two are binded with each other. Okay. This data binding in Spring will work in two-way. What's the two-way meaning? If once you bind a form with an object, when the form is getting displayed, form can access the data from this object also. The form can read the data from the object. If this object contains what properties? If suppose already some values are set for the properties, then what happens? The form can read the values of the properties. Second one is what? When the form is submitted, the data of the form, the submitted form data will be stored into object. Nothing but it is what way? Two way of accessing the data. Form can access the data from the object, and object will get the data from the form. So in Spring, data binding always works in two way, not one way. Once you bind a form and object together, then what happens now? Form can access the data from the object. Object will get the data from the form whenever the form is submitted. Right? So this is called two-way binding. Two-way binding. Okay. For example, in this object we have a property called country list, which contains all the list of countries' names. In the form, there is a drop down select element. There is a drop down select element. Now what is our requirement? Whenever the form is getting displayed, automatically this drop down box should be replaced, should contain countries, list of countries. So form can access the list of countries from object. Means the form can access the data from the object when the form is getting displayed. So which means what? The data binding is going to work in two way. Form can read the data from the object property, and whenever the form is submitted, the value is going to be set to the object properties. So in Spring, the data binding, it does not work in single way, it works in two way. Form can read the data from the object can get the data from the form whenever the form is submitted. When the form is submitted. This is two way, not one way. Okay? Which attributes are going to play a role in binding the form and object together and binding the form field and the object property together? Two attributes will play a key role. And those two attributes are the last attributes we have discussed. One is th::object. Next one is a th::field. th::object and th::field. This facility is called what? A data binding. This is called data binding in Spring MVC. Okay? Right. Let me show you a sample file first. Okay. Now this is one HTML. This is one HTML page, but it also includes some time-leaf attributes inside the tags. Okay. Now this HTML tag contains what? HTML tags with the time-leaf attributes. It has HTML tags with time-leaf attributes. you try to understand me. This is one HTML, but it has HTML tags with timely attributes. Okay. Timely attributes contains what? Value expressions, URL expressions, field expressions, like that. Okay. There is a value expression. The question comes in, from where the TimeLeaf engine is going to replace that value expression with the actual value, the real value. From where it is going to get the data?